Hello everyone, today we'll be seeing how fast Incineroar can beat Pokemon Moon in a solo run challenge. Let's get straight into the video. Alright everybody, this is going to be our 5th video overall for Incineroar. The previous run we did with Decidueye, and honestly, I kinda had to do that run twice because somehow I lost half the footage of the first playthrough because I did it in 2 separate days, but I made sure to fix that mistake. But I can definitely tell you with Incineroar, I did not make that mistake at all. But as we go through the early game here, just as you expect from the past several Pokemon Moon videos I've made, let's go over the stats and the moveset. We have 95 HP, 115 attack, 90 defense, 80 special attack, 90 special defense, and 60 speed. We're also in the medium-slow level up group as well, just like all the other starters. But one thing you might be noticing with the starters is the starters in Alola have very awful speed stats. And that's just kind of a weird thing in general with the Alola games, because I saw this video talking about just how low the speed stats tend to be, and I can definitely see that for sure. But funnily enough, this Pokemon is incredibly bulky. Having 90 in the defenses and an almost matching HP stat, it kind of makes it as tanky as Mew. And I remember a while ago in the past, we actually did an Incineroar backport in Pokemon Blue, and I legitimately could not believe how tanky it was. I actually thought I mistyped the stats, but no, this thing can just take a lot of hits. And if we also take a look on the side of the screen at our level up moveset, just like with Decidueye, we get a bunch of level 1 moves, but for this run, it's going to be Lick, Growl, Ember, and Scratch. We won't have access to Darkest Lariat, Bulk Up, or Throat Chop until we get to the move relearner at the Pokemon League. And after that, some other noteworthy moves are Fire Fang at level 14, Thrash at level 38, Flamethrower at 44, Flare Blitz at 55, Outrage at 60, and Cross Chop at 66. Honestly, not the best moveset overall, but let's see if we can make up for it in the TM department. And if we look there, there's one move that does make up a lot for it, and that is TM1, Work Up. This is going to be a very great setup move to have, especially since, as the name implies, this is the first TM we get access to. And throughout the rest of our TMs, we get Hidden Power, Sunny Day, Earthquake, Return, 80 Power Leech Life, which will come in handy, Brick Break, Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Flame Charge, Low Sweep, Overheat, Focus Blast, Brutal Swing, Acrobatics, Shadow Claw, Giga Impact, Bulldoze, U-Turn, Snarl, and Dark Pulse. So we definitely do get plenty of coverage, although I do wish our special attack was a little better, because we're not going to get a good physical fire move until Fire Fang, and then after that, literally Flare Blitz. And also, I did just realize I actually forgot to start my timer with the intro skip of 4 minutes and 20 seconds. You may think that's a funny number, but I did time this. So I will make sure at the end of the run to compensate for the time. But anyway, we've got to start thinking about how we're going to take on the Island Kahuna Hala, because since we are part Dark type, we do have a type disadvantage against him. But for right now, technically we do have to deal with the normal trial with the Totem Alolan Raticate, but we can literally just get the TM for Brick Break in there and just one-shot it right here. I'm not even going to play an intro for it, this is just very quick. And then with the Raticate defeated, we got to continue thinking, how are we going to defeat Hala? And to be fair, I think the answer is just do a lot of training. In fact, in the cave where the Alolan Raticate is, I still need to remember what that place is called. I do train on a bunch of Rattatas and Zubats in the wild to get to level 17, and this is going to be the level I enter the Hala fight at. I'm just hoping that having access to Fire Fang will be enough. So let's go ahead and check out the fight. Hala leads off with his Mankey. I'm also having Intimidate as my ability, which is Incineroar's hidden ability. Normally, Intimidate is not a good solo running ability, but I think for this game specifically, it ends up being very good, because in a lot of these runs, the first Pokemon on the trainer team ends up being pretty dang powerful, and it does help out on the Mankey. but unfortunately the Crab Brawler is able to use all-out plummeting and just destroy me, and I black out all the way back to the Pokemon Center before Route 3. I do a bit more training in the wild to get to level 19 since I've already fought pretty much all the trainers in the area. I'm just hoping this will be a good enough level. I do have workup on my set as well, but the problem is with the Mankey, it has Focus Energy followed by Karate Chop, so it could just straight up give the middle finger to Intimidate. But fortunately, I was able to get in one extra workup, and that workup allows me to one-shot the Crab Brawler as well as the Makuhita that comes right after. And before we get to the next island being Akala Island, there are a few things I want to get. I'm going to head back to the Melee Meadow, enter this little cave entrance right here, and enter the C-word cave, because now with access to Tauros, I can break this rock right here and get the Expert Belt. This will boost the power of super effective moves by 20% and is generally a pretty universal held item. I also do have the Quick Claw as well, which I got from the trainer school when I was there much earlier in the run. Then I can take my Tauros all the way to 10 Carat Hill, and I'm not coming here just for the Heartstone. Well, I don't even get the Heartstone at all. I go up this giant slope right here and get myself the TM for Acrobatics. This is a very interesting move. It's only 55 power, but if you're not holding an item like the Expert Belt or the Quick Claw, it becomes a 110 power flying type move. So it ends up being pretty dang powerful. And this can also help us with some of the totem fights, for example on the grass one. And to be honest, it does upset me we don't get access to Acrobatics before Hala, but having a flying type move that powerful before him definitely would have been a little busted. Anyway, now that we are on Akala Island, there are 3 trials and a Kahuna fight. We have the water trial, the fire trial, and the grass trial. We'll definitely have an easy time at the grass trial. The fire trial ended up being the hardest trial on this island on average throughout the rest of my Sun and Moon playthroughs that I've done so far. And the water trial is never really that hard. The wishy-washy just isn't that good. But even though the water trial usually isn't that hard, I still do fight a lot of the trainers in the area to level up. And I'm actually going to be doing something unique. I am actually going to search in the grass south of Paniola Town, which is, I hope, pronounced correctly. I'm going to search in this grass for a Pikipek. What I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to do SOS training. What SOS training is, if I hadn't already explained it in the Decidueye video, I'm not sure I did because I'm doing this voiceover first, mainly because I need to record the second playthrough for it. But essentially what the SOS training is if I find a Pikipek and purposefully let it live in low health, I can actually get it to summon for help over and over again. And once an SOS battle starts, anytime I defeat a Pokemon, I get double the EVs. And Incineroar needs a lot of attack EVs for the later part of the game. Because in Sun and Moon, a lot of the Kahuna fights, the Elite Four, and Kukui are all fully EV trained. So we're going to be at a massive disadvantage. And also, since there are no trainer boosted experience sources in this game because they removed it, this ends up being one of the best ways of getting XP as well, so it's like killing 2 Pikipeks with 1 Firefang. And while I do this Pikipek SOS training, I'm going to go over my hidden power typing in nature. We're running Jolly for extra speed and less special attack. This plus speed nature is not going to be enough for the later part of the game, but some extra speed is better than none. I think for these Pokemon Moon runs, I think plus speed might have to be the default nature choice. And our hidden power typing is actually hidden power grass, but not for the reason you might think. The reason I go for hidden power grass, it was actually an idea from John Calibro, one of my YouTube members who helped me a lot with these runs because he does his own Sun and Moon runs on his channel. He suggested that if I use hidden power grass, I can get the Pikipek to live in red health, and if the opponent is lived in red health, they have a much higher chance of calling for help. So I can effectively just spam Brick Break and Firefang on the Pikipek that ends up being summoned. And if you're wondering why the Pikipek needs to be in low health, the main reason is that if the Pokemon in a wild battle is below a certain amount of HP, their chances of calling for help go up. And each Pokemon has a base call rate in this game, some are better than others. It's anywhere from a scale of 0 to 15. And Pikipek is 15. So if a Pikipek is in low HP, it essentially has a roughly 75% chance of calling for a helper each turn. And during the turns where I'm waiting for a Pikipek to be spawned, I can just spam workup. So this ends up not only being a very fast source of XP, but I'm gaining lots and lots of attack EVs. And this can get really efficient if you get really lucky and Pikipek spawns help every single turn. But it's not always guaranteed though, because sometimes the Pikipek can call for another Pikipek and nothing shows up. But there's actually an in-game bonus for that. If the opponent Pokemon calls for help and no one shows up, the next one is effectively guaranteed. Not effectively guaranteed, but like the chance goes up a lot. And depending on the opponent's base call rate, it can end up being guaranteed, and I think for Pikipek it is guaranteed. I continued training on the Pikipek until I get to level 24. I didn't really choose to stop because I got to level 24. I had PokeLink running on the side so I could look at my EV spread, and I knew for a fact I would have enough attack EVs for the rest of the game. So with all this training out of the way, why don't we go take on the water trial? On the Wishy-Washy, I go for a turn 1 acrobatics, and without holding an item, it does slightly less than half. I then decide to switch to Hidden Power Grass for Wishy-Washy, and it ended up doing less than that, and then it ended up healing itself. So yeah, that was kind of rough. But that's fine though, I can just continue spamming acrobatics as the Alomomola wastes time with Helping Hand. Oh, I'm sorry, not Alomomola, I meant the fat fish. That's a Shadow Stitch Plays inside joke. Check out his channel if you like Gen 5 runs. But anyway, see what I mean by the water trial generally being pathetic? I tend to be more scared of the fire trial, because it's not like it's just a fire trial, it's also a poison trial too. Because the Salazzle and the Sizzlipede tend to like to use Toxic, Torment, and Venoshock in addition to moves like Flame Burst. So it can actually be kinda scary. I'm definitely worried about Venoshock more than anything. Before I enter the Well of Volcano Park, I do go inside the Thrifty Mega Mart, get myself the TM for rest, and a bunch of repels. I also do get the charcoal when I enter the Well of Volcano Park, and I have this to boost the power of fire moves by 20%, and I really would like to get Rock Tomb, but I was kind of surprised by this. This thing does not learn Rock Tomb. This thing really looks like it can hurl rocks. But anyway, I don't think it'll be too big of a deal. Why don't we go take on the fire trial? During this fight, the Salazzle gets a special defense boost. It goes for a turn 1 Torment as Acrobatics does more than half, but unfortunately due to the Torment, I can't use another Acrobatics, but that's fine though. Bite ends up knocking it out too. Then I can use Acrobatics on the Salandit, and then boom! I literally just first tried the fire trial. Honestly, those attack EVs really went a long way, but it may have looked like a waste of time in the early game. But to be fair, I would need XP for later in the run anyway, plus I need the EVs in the end of the run anyway, so it ends up being really worth it. In fact, I think for most runs, it might be worth just grinding out EVs, but we'll see when we get there. And with the fire trial cleared out, I now have access to Charizard for Fly, but before I continue on to the grass trial, I actually fly back to Humalau City, and I enter City Hall and get myself the Shell Bell. I meant to get this earlier, but I just forgot. But as we head our way toward the fire trial, Colress does give us the TM for Flame Charge. Yeah, Colress for some reason is in this game. I'm not really too sure why. He definitely has a role to play in the Ultra games, but in the originals I'm not really sure why he's there. Similar thing with some other people. But as I continue fighting the rest of the trainers, I do think it's probably not necessary to fight them. But to be fair, these were first playthroughs. I'm not too experienced with Pokemon Moon yet. So I'm just gonna fight these guys and go take on the grass trial. I'm pretty sure it'll be very easy. On the Totem Lurantis, I go for a turn 1 Acrobatics. It does less than half. The Lurantis is gonna outspeed me because it gets a speed boost. But you know what, that's fine though. Fire Fang ended up destroying it from there, Then I can just use Fire Fang on the cast form. And you know what's funny, the cast form never even had a chance to set up the sun. And to be fair, even if it did, I would have just completely destroyed it even faster. But you know what? This Pokemon is really starting to surprise me. It had a completely easy time. It had an easy time on the Akala Island trials. And I do wonder how it's going to fare against Olivia, because you gotta remember, Olivia uses rock types, and 2 of her Pokemon have Sturdy, so I'm not going to be able to knock them out, so it's definitely worth worrying about. But usually when I enter Coney City right before the Kahuna fight, I can go to the TM shop and look for something, and there's 2 things here I want actually. I'm going to purchase the TMs for Bulk Up and for Shadow Claw. Shadow Claw will help a lot later at the Ghost Trial on Ula Ula Island, but Bulk Up will definitely help here. It's at least better than Work Up because I'll also get a defense boost. So why don't we see how this move fares against the Rock type Kahuna, Olivia. Olivia leads off with a Nose Pass. I go ahead and use Bulk Up turn 1 right away as I get paralyzed. I still have Bite on the moveset anyway, and if you're wondering why I outspeed, Generation 7 nerfed the speed drop of paralysis. Instead of 3/4ing your speed, it just halves your speed. So sometimes I can still outspeed, but it's a little unfortunate that on the Bulldor, it ends up knocking me out from there. On the second attempt, I enter the fight with a Cherry Berry to just eat up 1 turn of Thunder Wave, but it doesn't really end up working that good because 1 Bulk Up with Brick Break is not enough to take care of it. I really should have done Resto Chesto. I just didn't want to get rid of any of my moves, but looking back at my moves, I probably could have afforded to get rid of Bite. I really do not need Bite anymore, but it ends up being fine in the end because on the second try, despite being paralyzed, I still knock out Olivia's entire team, which is honestly pretty surprising. Now at this point, we just gotta do the boring Aether Foundation section. No one cares about this section, so let's just skip straight ahead to Ula Ula Island. There's only 2 trials on this island, the Electric type trial and the Ghost type trial. The Electric type trial doesn't really tend to be that good most of the time, but the Ghost trial I would definitely say is the most terrifying trial in the game, because if you don't have a Mold Breaker like ability, Mimikyu will always have its Disguise up, and this was before the generation that nerfed Disguise to where once it's broken it loses 1/8 of its HP. I believe they originally did that to prevent Mimikyu Focus Sash from working so you can technically live 2 hits, but I don't know. But let's just worry about the Electric trial. Before I climb up Mount Hakunali, I can actually talk to this berry tree right here on the route just before the bus at the bottom of the mountain and pick up some berries. These are EV reducing berries. I can actually use a couple of these berries before going to the top of the mountain because the Pokemon Center up there sells vitamins. I used some berries to get rid of 10 special attack EVs and 10 HP EVs. So that way I could theoretically buy some extra protein or maybe a Carbos. I don't think I can buy protein because of the EV training I did, but we'll see once we get to the top of the mountain. And we're here. And in the Pokemon Center, I'm gonna buy some vitamins. And today's vitamin of the day is 7 iron. The reason I want iron is because there are a lot of very powerful physical attackers in the late game, so having extra defense will surely help out. I didn't end up going for speed because my speed is pretty decent at this point, and it's not like it's going to get any better. Plus, with having access to Bulk Up, I can build up my defenses even better. So as soon as I defeat Mullane and his Steel types, we can enter the building here and go take on the Electric trial with the Totem Vikavolt. The Vikavolt in this fight starts off with an Omni Boost, and it does have an Oka Berry, so Fire Fang only does like a third, and surprisingly or unsurprisingly, the second Fire Fang doesn't kill it, but I can knock it out with a third one. And this Charjabug is very weak. It just paralyzes me and just does very small amounts of chip damage. So once the Charjabug goes down, the Electric trial is finished. And then the next trial after this is the Ghost type trial. There's a lot of stuff I have to do on my way there, but it's really anything eventful. But actually, in the Mali City Pokemon Center, once I finish the electric type trial, I'm actually going to buy some TMs here. I'm buying the TM for Swords Dance and the TM for Bulldoze. I forgot to mention it earlier, but in addition to Bulk Up and Work Up, this thing also gets Swords Dance. This thing is just literally given so much utility to work with, it's kind of insane. And if you're wondering why Bulldoze, it's because the TM for Earthquake is in the post game. It's on Pawnee Island. So if I mentioned earlier at the start of the run we get Earthquake, that's a lie. We do not get Earthquake. So our best ground type option is Bulldoze, which is kind of sad. And it's not like it really matters. I'm not really gonna use Bulldoze on the Ghost Trial anyway. That's what I bought Shadow Claw for. But in front of the abandoned Thrifty Megamart, I'm going to fight a bunch of the trainers in the water for some extra experience, and I even catch a Tentacool in the water with a dive ball. Whenever you beat a lot of the trials in the early game, especially on Akala Island, they just give you a bunch of free Pokeballs, and the water trial gave me dive balls. And I actually looked at the calculations. Catching a Tentacool here with the dive ball is a 90% chance of catching at full health. And since you get 10 dive balls, you can literally just spam them. And if you need a refresher on why I need to catch a Tentacool even though there's no HMs in this game, in order to enter Po Town, you have to have 2 Pokemon to do a mandatory double battle, so that's why. But anyway, why don't we go take on the Ghost Trial now? I feel like we've waited long enough. And by long enough, I mean more than 1 minute with how this video's been going. Not only does the Mimikyu have Disguise, but also an Omni Boost. I'm going to go ahead and use 1 Shadow Claw just to break the Disguise before it's called for help. I do also have Swords Dance and the Expert Belt in this fight. I use another Shadow Claw on Mimikyu and it does more than half, but the Haunter puts me to sleep with Hypnosis and that puts a quick end to that fight. The third try ends up being the Charm. I actually thought of a pretty interesting strat. I actually taught Flame Charge in the place of Fire Fang. And now I can actually get a speed boost during the disguise break, and then as soon as the Mimikyu's disguise is broken, I can then outspeed it, set up a Swords Dance, and sweep both Pokemon with Shadow Claw. Honestly, this Pokemon is really heading for some great potential right here. But you gotta remember, with fire types in this game, there is a very huge threat lurking at the end of the game. Like, you know how like in Pokemon Yellow, the #1 threat to them is Giovanni? The threat to fire types in this game is Hapu, the final kahuna in this game. I mean, yeah, Olivia had rock types, which can be hard, but Resto Chesto ends up solving her most of the time because of uses of Thunder Wave. But Hapu is incredibly powerful, and Reshiram did have to struggle against her, but at least Reshiram had the Sunny Day Solar Beam strat. I cannot do that, so we're going to need to think of a different situation for her. But let's not worry about that right now. We've already completed 2 of the trials here on Ula Ula Island, and the final thing we have to do is take on Nanu the Island Kahuna. And with nothing eventful happening in Po Town, let's just skip straight to that battle. Nanu leads off with his Sableye. I have a slight moveset overhaul. I have Leech Life on my moveset in addition to Swords Dance. This was actually a pretty fun strat I came up with. I think John helped me as well. Set up Swords Dances on the Sableye, and then just spam Leech Life, not only doing a lot of damage, but also keeping my health high. And I gotta make sure my health remains high because the Persian will always outspeed me and go for Power Gem doing more than half. So I want to make sure my health isn't too low. So the fact that this thing learns Leech Life is actually very dang good, especially since it's now 80 base power. Also, fun fact, when Leech Life became 80 base power in Gen 7, they deleted it off of Zubat's Learn set till later in the game and gave it level 1 Absorb. Imagine how Generation 1 Zubat would do if it started with Absorb instead. That'd be an interesting thing to think about. But right now is not the time of thinking for hypothetical what-ifs, because right now, we have to go through the entire Aether Foundation and fight Lusamine and Guzma at the end. The Lusamine fight doesn't really matter since you're not required to win the fight, at least the first time. You are required to win against Guzma, So he's essentially the MVP fight here, so let's just skip straight to Guzma. Guzma leads off with Golisopod. I set up Intimidate on it, which is very useful, but then again, it activates Emergency Exit because I hit it with Acrobatics, so it's not like it really matters. The Pinsir does do quite a lot of damage to me, but that's because I chose to set up one use of Swords Dance. It ends up being fine and worth it, because one Swords Dance is enough to one-shot the rest of his team with Acrobatics. Man, this move is so good, I really gotta start utilizing it more in other games, like Gen 5 for example. And if you're wondering if I do win against Lusamine in this place, I actually do. Even though I said you're not required to win the fight, I have an unwritten rule where on fights you're not required to win, like the mandatory rival battle in Oak Slab. Even though I'm not required to win, I will always make an attempt to win. Like, I'm not going to purposefully lose for time's sake. I'm not going to do what speedruns do. But anyway, with all the Aether Foundation stuff done, we now have to head to Pawnee Island. Pawnee Island just has a few major events. I gotta take on Hapu, a very terrifying kahuna fight. Then there is also the entirety of the vast Pawnee Canyon, which is essentially this game's Victory Road, because the actual Victory Road, which is Mount Lanakia, has no trainers in it in the original Sun and Moon. I generally prefer to fight everybody in the Pawnee Canyon just for the sake of experience. And then after that, there is a captainless trial against a Totem Kamoa, which really isn't that great. Then we have to take on Lusamine in the Ultra Wilds, and in that fight you're actually required to win, plus all of our Pokemon will have totem-like boosts and that aura surrounding them, so there's quite a few things to do here. And the first thing I need to do is take on the Island Kahuna Hapu, but before I do that, I need to do some errands. I actually fly back to Hula Mouse City, and I talk to this guy right here to get an Arceus plate. I'm going to get the Fist Blade. This will boost the power of fighting type moves by 20%. And if you're wondering why I couldn't buy this earlier, you have to have defeated Nanu in order to buy these plates. And not all of the plates are here. Some of them are even scattered throughout the overworld. Also, inside the Hollow Grand Resort, I can actually fight these two beauties right here flirting over a quote-unquote Machamp. I do have to take them on in a mandatory double battle, so I still have to have Tentacool by my side. But even though these trainers aren't mandatory, they are mandatory for the TM that I want from them. And that is the TM for Attract, which is kind of funny, and kind of disturbing if you think about these two. I also do fly throughout the entire region and gather myself a bunch of rare candies. And I did actually want the return TM, but you can only get the return TM at night inside of this Mali City restaurant after you beat Nanu, but I started my clock at the wrong time and it ended up being daytime. So because of that, I'm actually not able to get return, which is kind of unfortunate, but I think I can work with it. Plus, if I take this alternative pathing throughout Diglett's Tunnel, I can actually enter Coney City from this weird little part of the town and actually get myself TM61 Will-O-Wisp. This is going to be a very great move for me to have, because what I can essentially do with this is have my opponent's attack even further after the Intimidate. That would allow me to set up Swords Dance a lot better. Plus, in the Pawnee Island Pokemon Center, I can purchase myself the TM for Fire Blast. I'll need this as well for later. Anyway, my moveset for Hapu is going to be Will-O-Wisp, Brutal Swing, which I got the TM for it south of the Lush Jungle on Akala Island, Flame Charge, and Swords Dance. So let's see how Hapu goes. Arguably, the most terrifying kahuna fight in the entire game. Hapu leads off with a Alolan Dugtrio. It sets up Sandstorm as I try to use Will-O-Wisp, but unfortunately I get the miss. I do end up hitting it on the second attempt, but by then my health is just too low and I decide to reset early. On the second attempt against the Dugtrio, I go for a turn 1 Will-O-Wisp, and get this, I missed again. Come on, dude. I know this thing's 85% accurate, but so is Fire Blast, and it doesn't miss this much. Third try is the charm though. I do end up burning the Dugtrio, so not only it has Intimidate, but also a burn. This will allow me to get set up, but not too long though, because I didn't know this until now. She actually has full heals, but at least I got a Swords Dance in for free, and I just have to hope it's enough. I'm not sure it will be, because Brutal Swing only does half, and then using its Tectonic Rage against me, which is the ground type Z move, allows it to just completely and utterly destroy me. Plus, the Pokemon Mudsdale has the ability Stamina. Every time it gets hit with a move, its defense goes up, which definitely isn't great for me, that's for sure. On the Dugtrio though, I do get a little risky and I set up 2 Swords Dances and it doesn't really end up paying off. After I get an absolute crap ton of resets, I decide to just suck it up and use all of my rare candies to get to level 62. And once I get to level 62, I don't end up beating her until the run gets a grand total of 19 resets. And the reason I win is because I make a slight moveset overhaul. I now have Attract, Brutal Swing, Flame Charge, and Bulk Up. Swords Dance is a great move, but I think the defense boost from Bulk Up is just very invaluable. Plus, I don't end up having Will-O-Wisp anymore. I think just having the defense boost from Bulk Up kinda make up for it. So if I ever do a second run, I really need to plan that fight a little better. And now with Hapu defeated, there's only a few things left. Go through the Pawnee Canyon, go into the Ultra Space Wilds, defeat Lusamine one last time, and then head our way through Mount Lanakia to the Pokemon League. And fortunately for me, since I had to use a bunch of rare candies for Hapu, none of the trainers in the Pawnee Canyon give me any problems, and before I take on Lusamine, I do have to take on the Captainless Trial with the Komodo, but this Komodo is just an absolute joke when you have acrobatics, so I'm just not even going to play an intro or even acknowledge the fight. Honestly, it's a fighting type, we may as well call it a hiker. Anyway, with all that cleared out, we can go into the Ultra Space Wilds and go fight Lusamine. She leads off with Clefable. I now have Brick Break and Swords Dance back on the moveset. I really don't need the defense boost with Bulk Up anymore, and the Clefable ends up being a pretty easy setup target unless you're a special attacker, because Moonblast has a chance of lowering your special attack. And once I get to +4 attack, that's just really all I need. I can just sweep her entire team with Brick Break, Brutal Swing, and if I need to, Flame Charge. The Beware does end up surviving a hit because of Fluffy giving it a defense boost, which is kind of unfortunate, but I do end up surviving a hit because of my high level. And once that's down, the rest of her team goes down pretty easily as well. Now we can make our way up Mount Lanakia and enter the Pokemon League, but before we do that, there's 2 mandatory rival fights, one against Gladion and one against Hau. Let's start with Gladion though. He leads off with Crobat, and even though it is very fast, setting up on it isn't really that bad. This is one of the few fights where I'm actually glad this thing is not part fighting type, because it would have made this fight a lot worse. Then on top of the mountain, we can go ahead and heal at the center, and actually use a Heart Scale on the move relearner. I am actually going to teach this thing the move Thrash. That may seem like a weird option, but without Return, I really need a spammable normal move for the rival fight coming up. And Thrash technically has more power than Return, so I think it'll end up working out just fine. We'll see. Hau leads off with a Alolan Raichu. I set up Intimidate, which isn't really that useful for it. I can go ahead and use one Flame Charge to make sure I get the outspeed, and surprisingly the Flame Charge almost one-shot it. And then I know for a fact he's probably going to Full Restore, so I opted to go for Thrash, and he didn't. Huh, I guess he doesn't use Full Restores on this fight. Then on the Primarina, Thrash doesn't end up doing enough damage, and Sparkling Aura is enough to give me a knockout. I really need to set up a Swords Dance, but setting up on that Raichu is an absolute nightmare. And since I'm running with a female Incineroar, I can go ahead and use Attract on it and hopefully not get hit with another Focus Blast. Unfortunately I do, but I'm not sure how, but I ended up surviving 2 of them. So let's just hope a +2 Thrash is enough to one-shot the Primarina. And it is. Okay, that is very good. Unfortunately, Thrash will not last going into the Flareon, and it's able to use Quick Attack on me and knock me out. Dude, I was so close. I mean, at least I can black out and keep the experience because the Pokemon Center is right nearby, but still that was frustrating. But I ended up beating Hau on the next try, so now we can go take on the final 5 trainers. Let's do this shit. The first member of the Elite Four I take on is Incineroar, the user of Ghost types. She leads off with a Sableye, which isn't that good of a Pokemon. I go ahead and use one Swords Dance after getting hit with Fake Out, then I get hit with Confuse Ray, making me hit myself. And what sucks is that Generation 7 nerfed Confuse Ray to where it's only a 30% chance you hit yourself, so that was pretty unlucky. But once I set up my Swords Dance, as well as a Flame Charge and Brutal Swing are just enough to take out her entire team. And I even survive Aftermath from the Drifblim. Next up is the Flying type Elite Four member, Kahili. I still have the exact same moveset for her as I did with Acerola. I'm going to set up 3 Swords Dances since the Skarmory is pretty weak and I can knock it out with Flame Charge. And with +6 in my attack, as well as a very high speed stat, I can just completely destroy her whole team. Although the Mandibuzz does put a halt in my tracks as I end up getting hit in confusion because of Confuse Ray. Hopefully though, I don't hit myself another time. And good thing for me, I only hit myself once before the confusion wears off. And because of that, I'm able to knock out the rest of her Pokemon with the most amount of damage of me getting hit by was just getting hit by myself. Next up is the Fighting type Elite Four member, Hala. I have a unique strat for this fight that John and I came up with. He leads off with Hariyama, I go for a Swords Dance after getting flinched with Fake Out, and Close Combat did very little damage to me because on Pawnee Island there's a bunch of berry trees with super effective type reducing berries, and I got myself a Chopal Berry. This made Close Combat do way less damage, allowing me to set up that Swords Dance. But what's very unfortunate is that I actually realized the Primeape on his team, which is the fastest Pokemon he has, actually outspeeds me. So I should probably have used a Flame Charge. On my second attempt against Hala, I set up one Swords Dance after the initial Fake Out, and it actually goes for a knockoff getting rid of my Chopal Berry. Cheater. But that's fine though. Funnily enough, with it, the berry being knocked off early, I get the Acrobatics boost early, and because of that, I can have a maximum powered Acrobatics. And because I used Flame Charge on the Crabominable, I'm able to outspeed the Primeape. I have Fire Blast on my moveset specifically for the Beware, because the ability Fluffy actually gives it a Fire type weakness, but with the defense boost, I essentially need to use a special move on it. Next up is the Rock type Elite Four member, Olivia. Olivia leads off with Relicanth. I'm holding the Chesto Berry in case she uses Yawn. My moveset is Brick Break, Will-O-Wisp, Bulldoze, and Swords Dance. Remember when I got Bulldoze a lot earlier in the run? It was because of the Olivia fight. I can actually use Bulldoze on the Probopass to do 4 times damage, then I can use Brick Break on everything else. Although, funnily enough, Brick Break would have done 4 times damage too. And if you're wondering why I have Will-O-Wisp, it's literally to break the Sturdy on the Probopass, as well as breaking Sturdy on the Golem. And interestingly enough, the Carbink is so defensive that it ends up surviving quite a number of hits. But once I get to the final Golem, there's really nothing she can do. And with all of the Elite Four members defeated, we now have to take on Professor Kukui and finally finish this Pokemon Moon run. He leads off with Lycanroc, it outspeeds and goes for Stone Edge, doing half. I want to use a Will-O-Wisp on it so that way the second Stone Edge can't kill me and I can set up one Swords Dance. I do go back into the fight holding a Shell Bell as well, because I realized I forgot to equip it. But that's fine though, after the Will-O-Wisp, I can set up a Flame Charge as well as a couple of Swords Dances, and I feel like at this point I'm indestructible. I level up to level 69, and at this nice level, I can outspeed and completely destroy the rest of his entire team. Although the Magnezone does have Sturdy and hits me with Thunder Wave, but honestly that's to be expected. But to be fair, I really should have used Will-O-Wisp on it. Oh well. I can still outspeed the Ninetales because of the nerf to paralysis speed drops, and I can finally clock in with a real time of 2 hours, 38 minutes, and 43 seconds, with 5 blackouts, 21 resets at level 69, with a game time after the long ass credits of 10 hours and 37 minutes. Honestly, if you take out the fact that Hapu was so freaking bad and needed better planning, Incineroar did really dang good. I was disappointed by how my initial playthrough with Decidueye did. I don't know if my second playthrough ended up being better because I haven't done it yet as of doing this voiceover, but Decidueye was actually my favorite of the 3. It was what I picked as a kid playing Pokemon Moon. Okay, I lied, not Pokemon Moon. My Moon playthrough choice was Litten, but I actually played more of Ultra Moon than Moon because I initially quit playing Pokemon Moon at the time. So technically I like to view Rowlet as my first starter. Fun fact, I still have that Decidueye in my Pokemon home. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. If we take a look at the leaderboard, a lot of Pokemon are definitely piling up around the 2 hour 20 minute mark to 2 hour to 30 minute mark. Honestly, I feel like this is probably an average result that some Pokemon are going to get. And I feel like I'm saying the word honestly too many times. I need to really increase my vocabulary, to be fair to myself. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this Pokemon Moon run. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more. And be sure to follow me on my socials or support the channel through YouTube memberships. YouTube members get access to the patch files for all the backport Pokemon we do on stream, as well as access to member-exclusive re-rank videos that I record in my Discord server. We only have 2 Pokemon Moon runs left until Daily December is over. Tomorrow we are going to be playing Pokemon Moon with Primarina, and then after that, Silvally. And if you're wondering, no, we will not have access to the memory discs because those are a post-game item. But to be fair, normal type Silvally is still pretty good. But anyway, I will see you all tomorrow as we continue Daily December.